I'm Mrs. Deuer. I'm a ruptured brain aneurysm survivor. My aneurysm ruptured on August the 18th of 2015. Well, I was at home that evening, and it was around 6 o'clock-ish or so. I was going to make dinner, and I was upstairs, and I was talking to my husband. He was about meeting away, so not very far away, 5-6 feet away from me, and my hearing tunneled suddenly. So his mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear him speaking. So when that happened at first with my hearing tunneling, and then I was extremely nauseous. I was vomiting and had light sensitivity, weakness in my limbs. All of that kind of happened, at once. And at first we thought that was a migraine because my sister suffers migraines, and those things happen with migraines sometimes. So we didn't think anything that it was more severe than that. But after those symptoms didn't go away, we knew it was something more serious than that. I had lunch duty that year with Miss Smith, the biology teacher, and I remember telling her that day that I had a headache. It was at lunch, and I had a headache. And I didn't think anything of it. But I remember that, and I remember the dress I wore that day. I went to the gym after work. I have no idea what I was going to make for dinner. I don't remember that, because that didn't happen. But no, those are just random things I remember from the day.
We typically always asked each other, how's your day going? How's your morning been? And when we kind of asked, like, how's your day going, I knew right away something was a little off, just because she had said, I just have kind of a headache today. And she didn't really say, I don't feel well, but she just said, I just have pressure in my head, or I just have a headache, or I don't remember exactly how she worded it, but it was something like along those lines.
Right, so after it happened, I don't remember much. I do remember my daughter coming home because she was playing tennis at the time, but it wasn't her night to play. And I remember her getting home from tennis and telling me how it went. But that's really it. Well, all of my research came, of course, after the fact, because I was like, oh, I don't even know what that is, right until it happened. So all of my research stems from the Brain Aneurysm Foundation, which is vafound.org. It all comes from there, and from the Tri-State Brain Aneurysm support group, which I'm a part of as well. And so, and then I have a Facebook group that I'm a part of too, which is Brain Aneurysm Survivors. So all of my research kind of comes from there, and the fact that most people who this happens to, there's some commonalities that they have. It doesn't mean that aneurysms can't happen outside of those parameters, but it usually strikes women over 40, people of color, heavy smokers, heavy drinkers, people with heart disease. So it sounds a whole lot like some symptoms for other, tragedies that happen. It sounds a lot like, a heart attack, but all of my research has been through the Brain Aneurysm Foundation, just learning more about how different people's consequences, I guess, were different than mine. And even if someone didn't pass from that, what are the disabilities that they have, after suffering this that they didn't have prior, immobility or impaired brain function, impaired speech. In some cases, people have to go on, public disability, and are not able to return to work, because of that. So it's so strange how it happens, and how everyone responds differently to it. So it took me it was easily probably 2016 before I realized, everyone doesn't have the same, not reaction is the wrong word, but doesn't have the same aftermath that I did. Because I recovered fully, and that doesn't happen with everyone. And my research, half of people who suffer ruptured aneurysms never make it to the hospital. And of those people who do, 30% of them have larger number than that, 70% I should say, have long-term effects. Whereas I don't have any long-term effects. I occasionally forget the right word that I want to say, which I think everyone does that. But really I don't have any long-term effects. I didn't really have any expectations of it. When I came home, because I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and when I came home, I had cerebral angiograms to check to make sure that my coils, which clotted my aneurysm in my brain, were working at 3 months and 6 months, 1 year and 2 years. And then at years 3, 4, 5, I had what are called MRAs, which is like an MRI, except that it scans tissue instead of bone. That's basically what it is. So I knew there was a 5-year maintenance, like my doctor's office, my neurosurgeon's office was keeping an eye on me for 5 years. But that doesn't mean that recovery kind of stops. I mean, a traumatic brain injury is a lifelong kind of process. It's not like with a broken bone, you're like, it's healed, I can, I don't need the crutches anymore, I don't need this cast anymore. It's not like that at all. And it's a lifetime of recovery after that. And people, sufferers, that happens at different speeds for everyone. So like for me, I would say it was probably the first year that I had headaches. Every day, first year I had headaches. And so, I mean, after that first year, that tapered down, significantly. And now I rarely get headaches, or maybe once every month, once maybe every 2 months. I rarely get a headache that's associated with that. I mean, there's other things like tension, sinus, and that kind of stuff. But I don't very often feel the effects of that now. I mean, we're still over 6 years out, so it just happens differently with everyone. Everyone's recovery is so different. So I didn't have an exact, this is when I'm going to be healed, right? Because it was all so new to us anyway. We're just going to see what happens. In some ways, yes. In some ways, not at all. Like in some ways, it was easy for me to be at home again because I had some occupational therapy in the hospital. So like I could fold laundry and brush my teeth and things like that. So the physical part of that was just rebuilding stamina. Was just training my muscles because they had atrophied after being in the hospital for 2 weeks. Like my doctor told me I could walk a marathon if I wanted to. So that was the way that I started. I started just with walking from my couch to the kitchen, and then around my house, and then around the block, and then around the neighborhood. And so I had to kind of work that way up physically, right? And because after a traumatic brain injury, it's not good to start really intensive exercise right away. It's just a rebuilding. So the physical aspect, yes. I mean, I would say that was, I would say easy. It was just a step ladder, right? It was just building that back up. Same thing mentally. Because mentally that was, it was what my brain could tolerate. So when I first came home, I would be awake maybe an hour and be like, I gotta take a nap. Because it would just be too much. And so, I mean, I probably, when I first came home, probably like the first month I came home, I probably slept, including at night, probably 18 hours a day. Broken up, of course, but it was just my brain trying to repair, because that's what sleep does for all of our bodies all the time, is repair what we need to do, and my brain was like, you need to sleep, so I would. So then mentally, as I grew in stamina over that, I was able to do more than that. Like I listened to music a lot, because that would help me remember in my short-term memory. Like if I could sing along to a song, then I could, remember it, right? And I started doing jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles and coloring and just things like that to kind of condition my brain to handle like when I came back to work. And I came back to work, this happened in August, I came back to work in October. So that was in and of itself a huge step for me, and I was only part-time. But that was difficult to train my brain to do that again, because I came back when my AP bells were. So that, was just reading essays and preparing for classes, and that was a big step too. And I came back full-time in January. So it's very much the baby steps. I'm not, no, because I mean the scans that I had in the past, my last one was last August, not this past August, and that came back clean, which means that my coils are doing what they should be doing in that one. So, and my doctor, has assured me, and I don't say assured is the wrong word, but predicted anyway that that's not going to happen again. And it's very, very, very unlikely that it would happen, because usually people who suffer one, they don't have recurring ones, that comes from that. So, from that original one. So I did the first probably, I don't know, I'd say probably 3 months, because the first 3 months we weren't sure what was going on before my first angiogram, my cerebral one that I remember. We weren't sure, if I was doing okay or not, because we just didn't know. But then after that first one was over, then we're like, oh, okay, this is what this is supposed to feel like, and this is what this is supposed to look like, and it was much more manageable, I guess is the word that I want to say. So, I mean, occasionally I worry about it, but I have too many things to be grateful for and worry too much about it. To learn more about brain aneurysms, check out bafound.org.